I know when there's people that are trying to expose me by
Yeah,
bringing these things up. And it's like, is this all you got? Because there's people in Washington right now that have done a lot worse stuff. And
I do.
so,
Yeah, I do want to say that people have tried to expose Jameson, and they said, "Oh, you don't have a past like these other people do, like Dan Crenshaw, etc." And I just want to say it doesn't matter what their background is; it's what they're going to fight for and what they're voting for. If they're liberty-loving people, it has nothing to do, almost nothing to do, with what their background is. If what they're voting for is wrong, would you rather have someone with a bad background and votes for what you want, or with a good background and does not so okay stuff, like votes for things that are not what they said they would vote for?
hey, welcome back, Huckleberries and Patriots. And as promised, I have a special guest for you here this evening. And so I want to welcome, is it okay if I actually use your name for privacy's sake?
You can say Lana.
Okay, Lana. Okay, well, you just said it, so hey, it's even better. So Lana, I want to say welcome, and I'm glad that you agreed to allow me to interview you. There's been a lot of speculation. I don't want to spend too much time on this, obviously, because well, I put out an official statement on this. But Lana, let me ask you a question. So you are a supporter of my campaign, yes?
Yes.
Okay, and I want to talk about how we got there as well. But my
Okay.
next question is, did I put you up to questioning Crenshaw at the Montgomery County Tea Party meeting, or did you do that of your own volition?
No, he did not put me up to it. No one put me up to it. I actually prepared my questions probably 5 days beforehand. And 5 days beforehand, Jameson didn't even know that Crenshaw was going to be there. So I don't know what else to say. It's just untruth. I was not planted by anyone. Jameson didn't even know that I was going to go up and ask questions.
Yeah, no, funny story about that really quick is I was initially going to go to the Kingwood Tea Party meeting that was happening on the same night because Greg Abbott was going to be there. And I'm on the anyone but Abbott camp. Just for anybody that's wondering, so I was going there to engage constituents out in Kingwood, which are part of Congressional District 2, and then it was actually Lana that reached out to me and said, "Hey, are you going to be at the Moco Tea Party? Crenshaw is going to be there." And I was like, "What? Are you serious?" Because we had already asked our team to come to Kingwood as well. But whenever I heard that Crenshaw was going to be at the Moco Tea Party meeting, I knew I had to be there. And so, but no, definitely thank you for clearing that up. And so, how old are you now? Are you 8? Are you 10?
8 plus 10.
There you
But
go.
but I'm telling people, don't tell anyone. But I'm telling people that I identify as 10. So
Well, it's all over the internet, especially on Twitter. And I also read, I think it was like Newsweek and what was it, CBS or AB? I don't remember. There was a few of them that I read that they actually had put on there where I corrected everybody and said no, she's actually 18.
yeah,
And and then I posted a picture, which by the way, that picture that we posted was after Crenshaw was questioned.
yes,
Yeah, that's, to me, it's kind of funny, the narrative that and the way that they try to spin things. But I want to kind of flip or switch gears here a little bit because I don't want to focus on whether I asked you to or not. Obviously, I didn't, and you are 18 years old, and yes, you are a supporter. Which, by the way, I am not ashamed um, to admit that you are a supporter, and I also want to talk about that here in a
yeah,
little bit as well. But I want to talk about your faith because I think that your faith and your reasoning for asking that question to begin
mhm,
with is something that really needs to be hit on. And so, you're 18 years old, and so just out of curiosity, how long have you been a Christian?
I grew up in church, but I didn't ask Christ to be my savior until I was about 14 years old. So 4 years ago.
And
Um, go on.
No, so since 14, so the last 4 years you've been a Christian, which is crazy because some of the conversations that you and I have had, I'm blown away by how mature you are, just in your faith and in Christ. Um, what was it about this question that you asked Crenshaw that bothered you so much?
I felt like, in a way, that he was attacking my Jesus Christ, because my faith is my most important value. And I wanted to set the record straight and basically ask him, like, can you clarify, please? That's what I was going to say before I was interrupted. I was going to say, can you clarify? Because I didn't want him to paint Jesus out to be a superhero, a fake superhero archetype.
Yeah, and so one of the things that I feel like is very important. So whenever I initially posted that clip, right? So I think it was I don't know. I think it was a 15-second clip or a 20-second clip or something like that where he's talking about that on the podcast. So one of the things that I'll never do is I'll never just post a clip and then not give context. So in the comments, this is on Facebook, on Twitter, anywhere that I posted that, I also posted a link to the full interview so that people could listen to the podcast for themselves and determine whether or not that was the correct context. Have you had a chance to listen to the whole podcast?
I've listened to big clips and portions of it.
Okay. I can tell you that I've listened to the whole thing. And let me just say this, and I think this is your heart too, Lana, is that we're not here to judge anybody. That's not what
That's
we're
not
here
our
to do.
place.
Right. Um, but the Bible does say that we judge a tree by its fruit. And it
Mhm.
also says out of the abundance of the what? The heart, the mouth speaks. And so, but I also know how easy it is to misspeak whenever you're kind of put on the spot. I've done that on numerous occasions. Um, but I don't know that I've ever done that when it comes to my faith. And so, I first of all just want to say thank you, Lana, for stepping up to the plate, asking that question, being 18 years old, and obviously people think that you're much younger. Um, so to be your age and to be a little smaller, to be looking up at someone like Dan Crenshaw, who is the epitome of that hero archetype, right? Um, to be standing face to face with them and be able to do that takes a lot of guts. It takes a lot of courage. And so, from the bottom of my heart, I want to say thank you for being willing to do that and to be able to engage into politics at such a young age. And I want to say this just really quick, and then I want to kind of pivot to a couple of other things here. But I personally believe that Dan Crenshaw had a very unique opportunity to uh, to build a bridge with a
Mhm.
member of Generation Z. Because here's at the end of the day, it's been difficult trying to get millennials and Gen Zers engaged into politics, and he had an opportunity to do that, and I don't think that he did that very well. And so so again, thank you for being willing to step out of your comfort zone, if you will, and ask the hard questions. Um, so I want to pivot just for just a minute, and just because I am utterly amazed that at 18 years old. First of all, have you ever voted before?
I have not yet, no.
So you're going to be a first time voter.
Mhm.
Um, what got you interested in politics at such a young age? Because I think it's fantastic. We need to be doing everything that we can do, in my opinion, to help bridge to help build those bridges. And between us older folks. I mean, I'm 39, but us older folks, us millennials, older millennials, and millennials in general, and even Gen Z. What was it that got you interested in politics to begin with?
I had friends who were involved in politics. This was back in 2019. And so they would invite me to the summits. And so I started going to summits. And at first I thought they were going to be super boring or something. I actually really enjoyed them. Like, I had no clue that my mind could engage in a way that I had no clue it could. I love, in a way, politics, because you you see what's happening in America and what the future is headed towards. And so then in summer of this year, I went to a place called Patriot Academy, which Rick Green has started. And
I think that's Rick Green and David Barton, isn't it?
Yes. And it got canceled, but I was able to have a group of about 35 people in our Uncanceled Patriots group. And they had this extremely solid foundation of Christ. I noticed that in everyone. We ranged from ages 16 to about 25 or 26 years old, and everyone there was a solid Christian. We may disagree on COS or other things like that, but our main priority in our lives was Jesus Christ and our faith. And I saw that and I wanted to run with it.
And so I think that's amazing. And I want to kind of get into asking, I don't know if it's going to be a tough question for you or not, but shouldn't politics and religion, shouldn't those stay separate?
I don't think so. I think that the Bible, I know that the Bible talks about politics. That's what it's about. Jesus talks about the taxpayers, and he died because of a democracy.
Wait. Can you say that one more time?
Jesus died. He died because of a democracy.
I love it. That's why I hate it whenever people say, "Oh, we're not a or when they say, "Oh, we're a democracy," or "This is a threat to democracy," and I'm like, "Yeah, we're not a democracy. We're a constitutional republic." Anyways, I just wanted to bring that up. Yeah. No, so go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you can go ahead.
Oh no, I just, to me that's such a profound statement, because that's absolutely what killed Jesus. It was democracy. And and one of the things, so I don't know if you have seen David Barton has a series on Amazon. You can also watch it for free on YouTube. And but he has a series on there called Foundations of Freedom. Have you ever seen that?
I don't believe so.
So I'll shoot the link over to you. There's basically, I think, 16 or 17 episodes, and each episode is 27 minutes long. But I highly recommend that to anyone to learn about the foundation, our founding fathers, and our foundations in freedom and in liberty. I think that what is difficult for Christians like us, we come against this narrative, or we get hit with these questions or these statements about keeping our faith separate from our politics. I personally don't believe that that's even possible, because I'm a firm believer that we need to vote our values. And when I also look at our founding fathers, they based the laws of our land, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, and our Constitution. They all base that on the Old Testament books of the law. And all of the books of the law can all be traced back to the 10 Commandments.
Yes.
And I think that this is really important, because that's what's called the moral law. Yes. And the thing about moral law is that it's immutable, which means that it never changes. Mm-hmm. And David Barton also talks about something called the law of liberty. The law of liberty looks to the 10 Commandments, which, you look at commandments like thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill, which kill's the wrong word to use in the original language. It meant murder, which is the shedding of innocent blood. These 10 Commandments, and the law of liberty says if you follow all 10 of these commandments, you'll have life and it'll keep you out of jail. But our federal government has over 10,000 laws on the books that if you break just one of them, it'll put you in prison. Right? So the law of liberty says you follow these 10 commandments, these 10 laws, it'll keep you out of jail. But the federal government, it's how we know federal government's gotten too big. If you break just one of these 10,000 laws, it'll put you in jail. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know.
Have you heard that before?
No, but I do agree with you.
Yeah. So David Barton actually, and I think who he was interviewing at the time was Rick Green, because Rick Green works close with David Barton and Wall Builders, and so yeah, it's a pretty amazing thing. So let me ask you another question. This might be kind of a hard question. It's okay. Like, I want you to ask me hard questions too. I'm not going to attack you like other people might, or get triggered. Sorry, couldn't help myself. Whatever, raw, uncut here. So what was I going to ask you? I just had a brain fart. That's how you know this is raw and uncut. Oh yes, I remember. Separation of church and state. Do you have any comments about that?
No.
That's totally okay. That's totally okay. So the separation of church and state doesn't exist anywhere in the Constitution. Where it was mentioned was by Thomas Jefferson in a letter to the Danbury Baptists. And because in Danbury, Connecticut, they were trying to mandate a religion. Now, what they called religion back then, we call denominations today. So like Baptist, Lutheran, Methodist, Catholic. That's what they called religions back then. And so in this letter, Thomas Jefferson mentions the separation of church and state, because if you think about it, whenever we came from Europe, there were, I think, 22 or 23 grievances for why we wanted our independence from, from England, Britain, whatever it was called back then. So it's gone through so many different name changes, but we wanted our independence from them. And that was one of the 22, 23 grievances, was the freedom of religion, for a freedom to worship. And that's part of the First Amendment. Well, if you think about it, if you remember back in Europe, they mandated religions, right? So if in Europe at that time, or whatever country you lived in, if the mandated religion was Catholic and then you wanted to be a Lutheran, that was considered heresy and you could be put to death for it, right? That's tyranny. And so whenever we came over here, we said, nope, there's going to be a separation of church and state, which means the state can't, the government can't come in and mandate and tell you who and how to worship. You have the freedom to do that however you want. And that's what the separation of church and state in that letter by Thomas Jefferson to the Danbury Baptists was talking about. And so I think that's something that is just very important to point out. We are a Christian nation, and the laws of our land were founded on Judeo-Christian values. And one last thing I'll throw out there is the fact that we are a Christian nation is what gives you, Lana, what gives me, what gives everybody watching today. It's what gives them their religious freedom to worship whoever and however they please, because God is a gentleman. And what was that scripture in Joshua, Lana? Choose this day whom you will serve. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And so God is a gentleman. He doesn't force anybody to serve him. And that's what separation of church and state is all about. It's the fact that, well, let me ask you a question, Lana. Are our rights government given or God given?
Which rights? Because I would say God given.
Absolutely. And that's the very thing that our founding fathers believed too, that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable God-given rights.
We wouldn't exist without him.
No, not at all. Not at all. And so you've been a Christian for 4 years now. Your faith has played a big part into your politics. That's actually what led you to ask Dan Crenshaw this question.
For sure.
Ultimately, what are you hoping to do? With how you're getting involved in politics and your faith, and in mixing your politics and faith, which again, to me, you really can't separate the two. What is it that what is your goal? What is it that you're really hoping to do at 18 years old?
I just want to spread the word of God, that I want to make Jesus famous.
I love it.
That's what I want to do.
And so how can I help you do that?
That's a good question. I'm going to have to think about that.
Well, I'll tell you that one of the ways that I'm going to help you do that, because we share the same beliefs, One of the ways that I'm going to help you do that is I'm going to fight to protect our First Amendment right. The other thing that I'm going to do is if I get the privilege of being elected to Congressional District 2, and actually whether or not I get the privilege of serving the people of District 2 or not, God has gifted me a platform here to be able to make a difference. And so I'm going to continue to shout from the rooftops, the faith of our nation, and that Jesus is the answer, and to speak truth, because I think that's so important. I feel like that's missing, from so much of our society today. I did see a picture that you took with Crenshaw not too long ago. Was he at one of these youth rallies?
It was his youth summit that I went to.
Okay.
And I met him there. That was my second time meeting him. I met him in 2019 as well.
Okay, right on. And what was it that stood out to you about Crenshaw?
Probably how well known he was, and the fact that he was a congressman.
Okay, I mean, that fair enough. His message, did his message resonate with you in any way?
His message when he spoke at his rally?
Yeah, at his rally or at the summit?
Yes, in a way, because I did believe he was a Christian. He talked about it. He talked about being a Christian, and he talks about God. That was the biggest thing that stood out to me. I always prayed that he would be a Christian and that his words would be true to him. I had heard that he's a Republican, so automatically my mind goes to, oh, he's supposed to be good. So I can go to one of his rallies. I had friends going, so why wouldn't I go? I mean, it sounded like a lot of fun.
Yeah. No, I can definitely identify with you there. So whenever I graduated high school whenever I was 19, and then I worked at Chick-fil-A for a year out of high school. And then after that year of working at Chick-fil-A, I wound up being homeless for 6 months and living in my car. But there was something unique about September 11th of 2001, and that was the day of the terrorist attacks on 9/11 happened. And after that day, like, the nation just, like, the patriotism in America just, right, it just exploded. And I remember there was a song that came out. So there was God Bless America, but there was a song that came out that was America Bless God. And that came out right around that time, shortly after 9/11. And we saw more people coming into church.
Wow.
We saw patriotism just exploded. And you saw these country artists that were coming out with songs that talked about, and forgive my language here, but putting a boot in your ass, it's the American way. So there's all of these, like, it was just a very patriotic time. And so whenever I first started paying attention to politics, it was Bush. And I remember I thought that Bush was a godly man. I thought he was a good man. And I've come to think differently. And then whenever Bush's 2 terms were up, the person that the Republican Party gave us was John McCain. And so then we had, of course, John McCain lost, and then we had 4 years of Obama, and then the Republican primaries come up, the Republican presidential primaries come up, and Ron Paul should have won, and he didn't. And they wound up giving us Mitt Romney in 2012. And so that's kind of put me in a place where I start to question, is the Republican Party still the party of Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson, right? Because in all reality, Thomas Jefferson is the one that started the Republican Party, but at the time it's called the Democratic Republican Party. But this is supposed to be the party of pro-liberty, right, and less government.
Yeah.
And it's also supposed to be the party that we as Christians identify with for several reasons, because we're pro-life, because that's one of our unalienable God-given rights, is we have a right to life first, then liberty, and then the pursuit of happiness. And I feel like it's in that order for a very specific reason, because you can't really be happy if you don't have liberty, and you can't truly value liberty and appreciate liberty if you don't first value life.
And I'd like to point out something about the pursuit of happiness is that on all of the other documents that the founding fathers wrote, when they put pursuit of happiness, they put land. And then for this one document, they changed it to pursuit of happiness.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of times,
not land, but property.
Property, right? And that's one of the reasons why you'll hear people say, and you've probably heard me say this too, is that I believe that as an individual, I have the right to live my life however I want, free from government interference at every level, so long as what I do doesn't infringe on the life, liberty, and property of anybody else.
And with moral obligation from the Lord.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What does moral obligation look like to you as a Christian?
Well, because I'm a Christian, my moral obligation is based off of God's moral laws. So
it's funny because earlier on Twitter, there was a comment somebody had mentioned. I wish I would have screenshotted it so I could just read it verbatim, but they were basically talking about how, I wish that, people would just keep their politics and their faith separate. I'm sorry, that wasn't what it was. It was keep it private and personal. That's what it was.
Faith is personal, but Dan Crenshaw claims to be a Christian, so I just wanted him to clarify.
Well, and so what I
help him, honestly.
No, absolutely. Whenever I read that statement, I agree with you, Lana. Like, yeah, my faith is personal, but it ain't private. And if you come across somebody that calls himself a Christian that actually believes that your faith is supposed to be private, then they don't understand the Great Commission. Right. And the Great Commission, Jesus said that, verily I say unto you, all the things that I've done, you shall do also, and even greater things shall you do, because I go to my Father. And he says, that I command you to go and make disciples of all the nations. You can't make disciples by keeping your faith private.
Yep, we are called to make disciples of all nations, like you said. I actually have it written right here. Christian means little Christ. So we're supposed to directly reflect Christ as he was living on earth. And if he was fake, then we can't reflect that. How are we going to reflect someone who is fake?
Yeah, absolutely. And in I heard it said, I think it was Todd White where I got this term from. But whenever we talk about representing Christ, we're literally called to represent, to represent Christ to the world.
And it's okay to test someone's beliefs to see if what they say and what they believe is the same thing. Like, we under question, your faith grows stronger, and you should be happy to explain. 1 Peter 3:15 says, but sanctify the Lord God in your hearts, and be ready always to give an answer to every man that asketh you a reason of the hope that is in you with meekness and fear.
That's so good. And that's actually the scripture that we use for apologetics. I don't know. Are you familiar with apologetics?
I've heard the term.
So basically, apologetics is the defending of your faith, and so we actually call those people, and that is a ministry, by the way, and we call those people apologists. So whenever you see debates between, like, say creation, and Darwinism or what have you, or evolution, so that's apologetics. So you really have to know the word, and you have to know history. And what I think is unique is that the Bible has been forensically studied and has been named the most historically accurate document in history.
And there was one guy who reacted to my I guess question, and he's on YouTube, and he said the Bible is what makes the most agnostic and atheist people. And I'm like, that is true, because without the Bible, we can't, like, even though he's a different religion than I am, we can't believe, like, does that make sense to you?
Well, if you don't mind explaining his,
Okay.
what was his comment?
He said that the Bible is what makes the most agnostic and atheist people.
Interesting. I'm trying to think.
Because without the Bible, there would be nothing to believe anyways.
Well, but then there's that scripture that talks about how all of creation is groaning, right? But that is indeed a very unique perspective. But I think you might be onto something there.
But it's
at the same time,
it's just because they won't fear God. They won't fear God. That's the only reason that people are agnostic or atheist. We have all the proof to prove that Jesus lived on earth and he died.
Yeah, well, but we have all the
that or not, that's their personal choice.
Yeah, historically and forensically, right? And the crazy thing is that in the Bible can be very divisive, and actually Jesus is actually very divisive, because if you consider how he came onto the scene, and he didn't come onto the scene to bash in the heads and confront all of the unbelievers. He actually came to confront the religious leaders, the religious zealots, the Pharisees, the establishment, right, of their government.
But also, like, don't throw your pearls upon swine either. Because if he didn't accept what he said, then he was going to move on.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But his message, he actually came and he said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. No one comes to the Father except through me. That's a very divisive statement, because we live in a world now with this subjective truth, right? And you've heard people say, well, this is that may be true for you, but it's not true for me. This is my truth, and I don't believe in my truth or your truth. I believe in the truth, and then there's our perception of it, and we have our individual perceptions.
I use the word belief. That's your belief, and that's my belief.
Yeah, no, I like that. But Jesus literally said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And he's literally saying that there aren't multiple ways to heaven. I am the only way to heaven.
Yep.
That's divisive. And as a matter of fact, there's a scripture that where he talks about, don't think that I've come to unify. I've come to divide. Now, not to take that out of context, there should be unity in the body of Christ, but there should be some separation, like in Romans, where it says, don't be conformed to the ways of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. People ought to be able to look at us and interact with us. And this is what was interesting about your interaction with Crenshaw, is that I am no stranger to hard questions myself, and I try to look at every question I get asked as an opportunity to build that bridge. And Crenshaw had a very unique opportunity to do that, and instead he didn't want his faith questioned. And I don't really know that you were questioning his faith. I think you were just looking for clarification.
Yeah, I was questioning his statement, because what he said was false, and I had every right to question it, because it was Q&A time, and it was time to come up and ask questions. Why wouldn't I go up and ask? That would be a question. Why wouldn't I go up and ask?
And I want to use this really quick as an opportunity. So I did put out an official statement yesterday, or what was the date? Was it yesterday? It was on the 18th. So I did put out an official statement on the 18th about what happened. And just out of curiosity, Lana, did you get a chance to read that?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so I want to take just a moment here to read this because I want to read it verbatim to make sure that I don't screw anything up here. But at the Montgomery County Tea Party meeting on January 17th, 2022, Congressman Dan Crenshaw took part in a Q&A session where several constituents brought up questions and concerns about his actions and voting record as of late. Among them was an 18-year-old young lady whose faith in Jesus is important to her, and she had concerns about remarks made on a podcast where Dan Crenshaw said, I quote, "The important thing is that we have societal hero archetypes that we look up to. Jesus is a hero archetype. Superman is a hero archetype. Real characters too. I could name 1,000, Rosa Parks, Ronald Reagan," end quote. While she is a supporter of my campaign, no one from my campaign remotely suggested she confront Crenshaw. With that being said, we are very proud of her for her courage and willingness to engage in politics at such a young age and for taking a stand for her beliefs. My hope is that she inspires others to do the same. However, I'd like to make my own observation and ask my own question. As conservatives, and this is quote, "As conservatives, we have struggled to gain support among both millennials and Gen Z. Dan Crenshaw had a unique opportunity to build a bridge with a brand new first-time voter, and what did he do? He burned a bridge by getting defensive and making demands instead of choosing humility and having a servant's heart. Does this sound like the heart of someone that represents the heart of Texas? Because in my humble opinion, knee-jerk reactions and getting triggered when being asked to give an account is not the answer. After all, we cannot restore liberty nor get out of the mess we're in using the same actions and thinking that has put liberty in jeopardy to begin with," end quote. So with that being said, Lana, you've asked me a lot of questions, and I think I've done a pretty good job of answering those questions. I try to always be someone that is always honest, open, transparent, because the truth is that I have a past, and I'm not perfect. And I tell people all the time, if you're looking for a perfect candidate, your boy's not the right man for the job, because I'm not perfect and I'm going to continue to make mistakes because I'm only human. But I wanted to open it up for you. Do you have any questions for me? Do you want to put me on the spot? And I just want to say that I welcome that, and I would love to answer any and all of your questions.
Yes. Question time. All right. So I have a couple questions for you. My first one is people have sent out a video of you speaking about how to manipulate people's minds. Can you explain more so what that was about?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for asking that question. So I've already kind of talked about a little bit of this evening about how I was homeless, living in my car for 6 months. I've been through a lot in my life. I've gone through a lot of heartache. I've been through stuff whenever I was a kid. My dad died whenever I was 10 years old. There was stuff that happened after that, stuff that happened before that. Really, really personal. So I won't get into that here. But it's junk, baggage, right? We all have junk. We all have baggage in our lives. And even though we get born again and we become a Christian, it doesn't mean that all of the baggage goes away. It just means you're forgiven. And even many times, whenever you're healed of some of that baggage, you still have scars. And then sometimes we get restored, which means the scars go away as if it never happened. But I've had a lot of baggage in my life. And so in that process of being hurt, Lana, I don't know if you've ever heard the term hurt people.
Yes.
But whenever you're hurt, you go into protection mode. And so I went into protection mode. And so to keep myself from being hurt, I insulated myself from relationship. I insulated myself from allowing people to ever get close. That actually came into my marriage. And so in that video specifically, it's a 14-minute video, and there's a few clips that are circulating around where they chose to take 10, 15, 20-second clip out of that 14-minute video, which, by the way, is a video that I did to get vulnerable, because we do have stuff. We all have a story, and many times the only way that we can get to a place where we can get over our own issues is to know that there's somebody else that's been where we are and they've overcome their issues. And in Revelation, it actually says that we overcome the works of the enemy by two things, right? The blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And you can't have a testimony without a test. And so in that video, I'm talking about some of my junk, and I'm getting vulnerable. I'm laying it all out there on the line. And so there is a portion in there where I talked about the fact that I was hurting, and that to protect myself, I knew how to manipulate people to get what I wanted. And I'm not proud of that. But if you go back and you listen to the whole thing, which, by the way, Lana, I'm more than happy to share the entire video with you. And also, if you're watching, like, I'll post the video below. I'm not ashamed of that video. I put that video together while I was running, or right before I started running, a community called Hope Dealers, where I wanted people to know that they weren't alone with their issues and that we all have a story. But I believe that we serve a God that takes the pain of our past and transforms it into a purpose because of the promise that God gave us, and he sent his only son to die on the cross to give us. And so, we serve a God that can literally take us from hurt to hope. And that's what that video was all about. It's letting people know that you're not alone. I've been where you are. And so that's really what that video was about. Last thing I want to say in regards to that is there is a very fine line between manipulation and influence. So some people would say, if you're in sales, for example, that in order to sell something, you have to manipulate people because you have to convince them that it's a product that they need. Well, I want to be clear about the differences, in my opinion, between manipulation and influence. So manipulation is whenever you influence people or you convince people or what have you, because it's self-serving, right? That's manipulation. Manipulation is self-serving. Influence, John Maxwell said that leadership is influence. Many times when you're manipulating somebody, you're doing it without their permission. It's a very evil thing. But influence is the exact opposite, because influence isn't about serving self, it's about serving others. And the other key detail about influence is that you can only influence someone to the extent that that person grants you the permission to be able to speak into their lives. And so there is a fine line, but there also is a difference. One is very self-serving, which what I did was self-serving. The other is not about serving self, but it's about serving others. And with that being said, I hope that this addresses your concerns. And again, I want to say thank you for answering that, or for asking that question. I will never, ever hide anything. I will always own up to my mistakes. I'll always own up to my past junk. I'm never going to stray away from these questions, because I'm going to the swamp to expose the swamp. And I don't need them having something they can hang over my head so that they can manipulate me into voting according to their agenda.
For sure.
It's just not going to happen. So I hope that answers your question, and I definitely appreciate you asking it.
Yeah. And my next question, your past voting record. I've seen some comments that talked about this. So what's up with that?
Yeah. So you say my past voting record. I'm going to say lack thereof. So I voted 4 times in my life. Only 3 times has it counted. So I did vote for Trump in 2020. And let me see, I actually have this, my studio doubles as my office. So hang on a second, because I have a document in here that I want to pull out. Here it is. Probably not going to be able to see it. Maybe you can, maybe you can't.
Chris Hollins, County Clerk.
Yeah. So whenever I voted in 2020, I was still registered to vote in Fort Bend County, because I lived in Rosenberg prior to moving to Spring. Whenever I went to go vote, I was still registered in Fort Bend County, and they told me you need to update your information. And so I did. And then I had to vote on a provisional ballot. All of this means, just to be crystal clear, all this means is that because I was registered to vote in Rosenberg or in Fort Bend County, all that means is that I can't vote on the local stuff. But the vote that I cast for president, vice president, like all of that still should have voted or still should have counted. So this is what the letter reads. Dear provisional voter, under the provisions of section 65.059 of the Texas Election Code, the presiding judge of the early voting provisional ballot board shall deliver written notice of the final outcome of all provisional ballots cast in an election. The ballot board rejected your provisional ballot because the voter registrar found no record of registration on file. It's BS. Because I was registered to vote. I lived in, this was Harris County, mind you.
Mm.
And yeah, my vote didn't count. And I did cast my vote for President Donald J. Trump. So with that being said, that's only one time, right? I've only voted 3 other times. As I kind of shared earlier, I feel like I'm part of a party that gave us John McCain in 2008, Mitt Romney in 2012. I feel very disenfranchised by the party that identifies the most with my values. And after seeing Ron Paul get screwed, I felt like my vote didn't count. So I stopped caring. And this is a symptom of a much deeper issue here, just for your benefit, Lon, as well as everybody watching. So most people don't vote. Even less people vote in primaries, and less people actually vote in midterms, which is scary. Most people are so disengaged from politics, it's unreal. The question I want to ask is, well, why? Well, whenever you consider the fact that we're taught not to talk about 2 things, politics and religion, what it's done is it's led to a grave misunderstanding of both. And I was in that camp. I just wanted to live my life and complain, but never do anything to fix it, as is the majority of Americans. I was a product of that system, and the system is set up to keep people apathetic, to keep people from actually engaging and caring. That protects the establishment, and it ensures that they can remain in power. Lana, let me ask you a question, and I get that you are totally new to the world of politics. Did you know that an incumbent has a 98% re-election rate in the United States House of Representatives?
Mm-mm.
So have you ever heard people talk about how we need term limits?
Yes.
So I believe in term limits, but here's where my frustration is, Lana, is that term limits already exist. It's called the American voter. If we don't like the job that an incumbent is doing, we, the people, have the right to vote their butts out. My question is, why are we doing it? Or why are we not doing that instead of just complaining about term limits, term limits, term limits?
Yeah.
So, but I do believe in term limits, and I am committed to only serving 8 years in Congress, which is 4 terms. And so I want to make that known to everybody. But yeah, that's my voting record. I'm not ashamed of it. I was disengaged. It took Trump to wake me up. It took Trump coming along to help me re-engage, because he exposed that system.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, and my question is, and this may not apply to you, Lana, because you're a brand new voter, but my question for anybody watching is, I wonder how many of you are in the same boat that I was in. How many of you have been red-pilled recently because of President Donald J. Trump? Because he was willing to go against the system and to go against the plan. He was willing to go to Washington and fight.
He ran the country like
America.
a business.
He did.
And we didn't need a politician. We needed a businessman, just like he was.
Statesman. That's what we need, are statesmen. People that understand the struggle. Now, granted, people say, well, Donald Trump's a millionaire, he doesn't understand the struggle. I beg to differ, because he's been in bankruptcy. He's, if you look at the history of Donald Trump, and there was actually a couple of documentaries I watched, I think they're on Netflix, but they talked about his struggle in business. Now, granted, he's always had wealth, but that doesn't mean his level of struggle is different than, say, yours or mine, right? But I can tell you that I know what it's like to wake up in the morning and to have to go into the office and stop and pay $3 a gallon for gas and not know if you have enough money to put in your tank to make sure you can get to work and back, or even for the week or for 2 weeks. I know what it's like to move around, different bills and parts of your budget just to try to put a new tire on your truck or on your car. I know what that's like. I'm a regular person, and I'm part of the struggle, and I know what the struggle is like. And this is just me. I believe that's what we need. I believe that's what Congressional District 2 needs. It's just a real person that's just fed up, that is sick and tired of being represented by someone who only has a 74% conservative voting record, for someone that it feels like they're detached from reality. I believe Texas 2 is ready for a pro-liberty conservative Republican that's going to go to Washington, never vote to violate the Constitution, never vote to raise spending, and to always vote their values. And
by the way, the 74%, was it on Liberty Score?
Liberty Score. Yeah, Liberty Score.
Liberty Score. If you can actually look at what each person voted for, and you can calculate what they voted for, yes and no, and it is accurate. Politicians who don't want their record out there will say, oh no, it's not true. You have to vote no on everything to be at 100%. That's not true.
Not true. Absolutely not. The problem is, and this is a little off topic of from your question, so I apologize. The problem is what we call omnibus bills. And that's where they put like one or two good things in a bill, but then put a whole lot of bad things. And those bills are so thick that nobody reads them all.
Like the Green New Deal.
Yeah. So, and they'll put stuff in there that has absolutely nothing to do with what the topic of the bill is, to try to get that passed. That's that special interest. So that's what we need single topic legislation like we have in the state legislature here in Texas. And that's something else that I want to fight for. That's what we need. Anyways, to go back to, that's my voting record. And, I'm not ashamed of it. It's made me who I am. It's brought me to this place where now, we're the front runner. At least I think we're the front runner in this race against Crenshaw. So
hopefully, praying for that. I can't your area. So, next question: your past businesses.
Which ones? I've got these are probably also things that you've probably seen on Twitter as well. I've had a lot of failure in my life. When I first started off as an entrepreneur, one of the first things that I did was starting an HCG weight loss company. And this was back in 2010. And so we started that company. It was me and 3 other partners. One of the partners screwed us over. Now, let me just explain why I believe in HCG is because when I actually did the HCG protocol, it lived up and did exactly what it said it was going to do. As a matter of fact, the first week, I actually lost 17 pounds and 5 inches in the first week, which is crazy. But I believed in it, and I still believe in it. But 4 partners, one decided to screw the other 3 of us over, and so so we dissolved that. And so then there was another one because I loved what the HCG protocol did for me. I loved the idea of, and it was a fad. I still believe that it works, but at the time it was a fad, kind of like Atkins was a fad, if you will. Even though people that do the Atkins diet, they know it works. Same thing with keto. So keto works. So all these things, they're fads, but a lot of them do work. So I launched my own called Lifetime Weight Management. I only had $5,000 in startup capital. I was bootstrapping, which basically means that I had no huge private funding. It was just all using my own capital. And I was a brand new entrepreneur. And so, I I failed in that business as well. It didn't last very long. And it's a learning experience. Again, John Maxwell talks about, failure is part of the process, but whenever you
Yeah.
fail, you got to fail forward. And failure doesn't have to define you.
Yeah.
If you allow it, failure will refine you and you learn. One other business I want to talk about is a business called Success Direct Pro. So Success Direct Pro was a network marketing company, a direct sales company that I love the network marketing industry. I've had some successes in network marketing, and it's honestly for people that want to become entrepreneurs. It's the least barrier to entry, because you don't have to have your own products or your own services. You're basically becoming an independent contractor to market those products and services on behalf of the company. And so most companies spend millions or billions of dollars on advertising every year. And a network marketing company says, we're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to have independent reps to represent us, and they're going to get paid a commission whenever they sell our product.
Yeah.
So we decided to do that, called it Success Direct Pro. And it was an educational membership platform. And that lasted for, I don't know, 3 to 6 months. A good portion of that was me trying to build it out. And at the end of the day, me and my business partner, he was not really a big fan of network marketing. He doesn't believe that it worked because he never met somebody that was successful in it.
Mhm.
And so we wound up parting ways because we could not come to an agreement on the industry of network marketing. It wasn't a pyramid scheme, which is what people default to when it comes to direct sales and network marketing. It wasn't a pyramid scheme. I laugh whenever people say that kind of stuff, but it was network marketing, and it didn't last very long. Again, another failure. I'm not ashamed of my failures. There's not a single person that's watching this today that has never failed. And so the fact that I feel like a lot of this stuff, and I'm not, and this isn't your heart. I don't think that this is your heart. But I appreciate the questions. When I'm on Twitter, though,
Mhm.
I know when there's people that are trying to expose me by
Yeah.
bringing these things up, and it's like, is this all you got? Because there's people in Washington right now that have done a lot worse stuff, and
I do.
so
Yeah, I do want to say that people have tried to expose Jameson, and they said, "Oh, you don't have a past like these other people do, like Dan Crenshaw, etc." And I just want to say it doesn't matter what their background is; it's what they're going to fight for and what they're voting for. If they're liberty-loving people, it has nothing to do, almost nothing to do, with what their background is. If what they're voting for is wrong, would you rather have someone with a bad background and votes for what you want, or with a good background and does not so okay stuff, like votes for things that are not what they said they would vote for?
well, and I think, and you're absolutely right. And I think at the end of the day, what we all have to ask ourselves, Lana, is, do we want to continue on status quo politics? People that look the part, act the part, they look spotless. Maybe they're veterans, right? Which, to any veterans out there, like, I appreciate your service.
Yes, thank you
Like,
for your service.
I honor and respect you for that.
Mhm.
That is not that may be a qualifier for office, but it's not the qualifier for running for office. And all we need to do is look at John McCain. We can look at General Milley. I mean, Congressional District 2, would you really want to elect General Milley? Uh, and then of course we have Dan Crenshaw. So we need to get out of this place where we're like, oh, well, he's a Navy SEAL, or he's an Army Ranger. He was this, he was that. He can do no wrong, right? The military service isn't in question. What I question is congressional service. That's the only thing that I care about. And truth be told, Lana, I really don't care what Crenshaw does in his personal life. I mean, personally, I don't care if he's got 3 wives. I'm not saying he does. I'm just saying, like, I don't care, right? That's his personal life. The only thing that I care about is how is he representing me in DC. And that's what I care about, because as it sits, we're getting ready to lose our country. And I've said this on numerous occasions. I don't believe that we truly have liberty. I believe that it is an illusion. And that's why the very first thing in my tagline or in my slogan is to restore liberty.
Mm.
But we're losing our sovereignty as a state here in Texas. You
Republic,
know,
and we're a republic if we can keep it.
bingo, bingo. So, did you have any last questions for me? And thank you for asking these
Yeah.
questions.
So, just real quick, one that I had just had real quick. Did the FDA get involved in either one of your businesses or pills?
No,
Okay.
at least if they did, I wasn't aware of it. So, so no.
Okay.
It straight up was incompetence in business. And again, this was 10 years ago, right? It's a decade ago. And so, yeah,
And you were arrested, correct? This is my last question.
yes. Um, Arrested for traffic tickets that did not get paid. There was a warrant put out for my arrest, 3 warrants to be exact, out of Needville, Texas. So shout out to Needville. Out of Needville, Texas. I didn't pay those tickets. They suspended my license. And whenever you drive without a license, and you get pulled over, you get arrested and go to jail. So that happened. And I feel like there was one more. Oh, driving without insurance. So
Okay.
I also drove without car insurance and got arrested as well. So to whoever keeps sharing that screenshot of me, and when they look up my record and they keep sharing that like that was one, I'm going to do you better. I've been arrested at least 3 or 4 times. So all for the dumbest stuff. So you're not going to embarrass me. You're not going to surprise me. Keep sharing it. I don't care. You're just bringing more attention. And I've said it before. I'll say it once again. Tell Crenshaw I said thank you, and I said hello. And I'm looking forward to firing him from DC. Come, it's about a little over a month away. So looking forward to it.
All right. That's all the questions I have for you.
Well, it has been fun, and thank you so much for bringing the heat. I definitely welcome that, and it'll be interesting to see, if anybody else brings up, if any other laundry gets thrown around. But well, Lana, I definitely want to say once again that just thank you for being willing to do this, and thank you for being willing to step up and to get out of your box, get out of your comfort zone, and to actually confront or ask Representative Dan Crenshaw a question based on a real concern that you had about how he's representing, or the actions that he's doing, and how he's representing us as Christians. Thank you for being willing to do that. And I think that speaks volumes. And I want to encourage you as well. Continue to inspire others. And that's really my hope for you. My hope for you, Lana, is that you will inspire other Gen Zers out there to engage in the political realm, but probably most importantly, is that the love of Christ will shine through you and reach out and touch those that are in your sphere of influence, and that you'll be able to make a difference, and in just loving God, loving people, and going out there and changing the world. And so, thank you again for being willing to do that, knowing full well that you might be under a lot of scrutiny as a result. But again, I think it speaks volumes about who you are and about your bravery. And so, again, thank you for that. All right, guys.
Thank you for asking.
No, absolutely. And so, all right, guys. Well, that pretty much wraps it up for today. I want to encourage you to go to JamesonEllis.com, connect with me here on social media. If you haven't, I'm here on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Getter, Gab. I'm on all the YouTube. I'm on all the social media channels. But let me know in the comments below, what did you think of this interview that we did with Lana? Are you proud of her? Is there something you wish something else you wish maybe she could have asked? Is your faith important to you? Do you believe that we're a Christian nation, or do you believe that we should have the so-called separation of church and state? I want to hear from you. So leave your comments below, and I would love to engage with you there. And